The downgrade of South Africa's credit rating by international rating agencies Fitch and S&P Global provide a clear signal that the country is going to have to pull together like never before to overcome its economic problems. But what does the path ahead look like for South Africa when it comes to an economic recovery that everyone is hoping for? Well, Gabriella McKay joined me in discussion in studio. South Africa has been in a state of shock following the ratings downgrade. That's all we've been talking about for the last week or 2 weeks. But is it really a shock? Because economists, analysts, and South Africans have been talking about the possible downgrade, and ratings agencies have warned about a possible downgrade for nearly 2 years now. Would it be fair to say that the cabinet reshuffle was the tipping point?
Yeah, I think it would be, because essentially what the president did with the firing of Minister Gordhan, I think, and that's the main point. We do know other ministers also lost their jobs, but what you do with that is you essentially fire your economic policy. And investors then are sort of uncertain, the reasons behind it seem nefarious. So that just, it creates a lot of investor uncertainty. So it's definite to say that was the tipping point, because now ratings agencies don't quite know where you're going, even though you've said you're going to continue on with the macroeconomic policies you have. There's no proof of this, because you've suddenly changed the person who had made guarantees to these people to start off with. Because it was Minister Gordhan who had gone to the ratings agencies, who had gone to investors and tried to convince them not to downgrade South Africa, to keep investing in South Africa. And now that that person is gone, you are not sure what you're going to deal with.
The president says he's allowed to hire and fire ministers. So what does it really mean politically, in the political space, the fact that he had called for this reshuffle of positions? According to him, he did nothing wrong. He has that authority to hire and fire ministers.
He does. It's just the timing of it seems unbelievably strange. Again, it speaks to sort of nefarious purpose, that you want a nuclear deal to go through perhaps, and you have a finance minister who's not complying, or you want ratings hikes for other parts of the government, or you want certain things to go through and you have ministers who aren't compliant. Because if the president had done this with, for instance, the social welfare minister, where there was a lack of performance, and you get rid of that minister, that makes sense. However, to get rid of a minister who everybody agrees is doing their job and doing their job well, speaks to nefarious intent.
Certainly, there was an attempt made last year as well to get rid of the finance minister, and that backfired. So it does come across as if he was targeting the finance minister in particular for whatever reason. Let's move on. Apart from the political move by the president, the ratings agencies also cited other concerns. That is a poor growth outlook for the South African economy. They mentioned the need to address structural challenges in the economy. What, to your knowledge and from the research work done by the IRR, are those structural challenges that needs to be addressed?
The biggest challenge we have is a lack of growth, and that's linked to poor education. The sort of primary link is poor education, because then you can't take advantage of the high growth sectors in the economy, which for us would be, they would be sort of service businesses, and that needs people with education. The science and technology side, those need a higher level of education. We also don't have the advantage of a commodity boom, so we can't even make use of the commodities that we have, and even if that were the case, those only go so far. So those are the real challenges we have, is that we don't actually have the means to make our economy grow. So we've sort of got stuck in this stagnating economy that at best you could hope is going to grow by 0.1%, which is essentially nothing.
Is it realistic to say that the economy would start bleeding jobs soon following this new junk status?
It is, because what we have is you're going to start having investor money move out of the country. That is unavoidable, because what happens when a country gets downgraded to junk status, certain large investment bonds or companies can no longer invest in you. So they're talking about pulling about 600 billion rand out of the stock exchange, because they will be forced to sell off South African bonds. The rules and regulations they comply with say that they can't be invested in anything that's junk status.
So inevitably there will be layoffs.
Yeah. It's the removing of money from the economy. There's no way, just based on the rules and regulations, that stays.
Like us on Facebook, JoburgToday.tv, and follow us on Twitter @JoburgToday. Cybercrime is on the increase globally. This year's Nokia Threat Intelligence Report revealed an all-time high for mobile devices being targeted. I chatted to Brent Carey from software company Genetec. But countries are also launching cyber war attacks on each other. So first up, here's Marisa's report on South Africa's cyber defense research.
Despite all its benefits, the internet brought on cyber war and the need for cyber defense. And with the mushrooming uptake of miniature computers called smartphones by you and me, the threat is just so much more personal. Cyber attacks on African countries only became a reality with the arrival of broadband internet on the continent around 2009.
This is caused by, of course, the growth in connectivity and the fact that our infrastructure is underdeveloped.
Unfortunately, up till now, there's only a little pockets of cyber defense research. Most of the companies and industry actually focus on intrusion detection and protection, but not real cyber defense companies. As far as we know, there's no antivirus companies that set up in Africa.
The Cyber Defense Research Group of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research is the oldest such group in Africa, doing work for both military and civilian purposes.
We have to support the military to set up these systems to be able to defend the country from attacks. But the problem in South Africa is actually the cyber crime and attacks against citizens for cyber crime.
You know, we find similar problems in Russia, in China, in the US. But research seems to suggest that there's a strong correlation between the growth of the economy and the cybersecurity attacks.
We have very little universities who actually train cybersecurity specialists. We have no CERTs or national security centers that actually address if there's a real concern happening right now. It means we are being targeted and we don't have enough people to address it.
Although finally published late last year, the Cyber Crimes and Cybersecurity Bill has been criticized and it's not signed into law yet. The government and the CSIR also launched the Virtual National Cybersecurity Hub. The Cyber Defense Research Group runs various other projects.
One of the most impressive projects is Cyber Protect. This system has mainly two main objectives. The first being that we scan the internet for vulnerable hardware, vulnerable to certain cyber attacks. This information is then displayed on a map where you can filter down and you can see more information on each hardware being displayed. The second objective is where we search the internet for personal identifiable information, also known as PII. So we take all of this information and then also on a map, a world map, we plot all of the websites responsible for leaking those type of information.
It is not a run-of-the-mill job. If you have a mind that likes to think outside of the box and look at issues from different angles, it's a perfect career for you to go into.
For now, the idea of a South African cyber defense force may sound a bit geeky, but the CSIR Cyber Defense Research Group is laying the foundation for a critical future security need. Marisa de Klerk, Joburg Today.
Hi, this is Darren Simpson from The Breakfast Express on 947. You watching Joburg Today.
Brent, welcome. Great to have you with us to talk about this year's findings of the Nokia Threat Intelligence Report. Some very interesting revelations coming through that report. But before we get to that, just tell us about how Genetec is involved in the prevention of cybercrime.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Yeah, so Genetec, a Canadian-based company actually. We're 20 years old this year. The company is a software manufacturer, so we create a software platform specifically for the physical security world. However, in the last decade, these two worlds of cyber and physical have started to overlap. And Genetec's role has obviously become more and more prevalent within the cyberspace because of these worlds overlapping. So from a platform perspective, we offer the software to monitor your cameras, your access control readers, for example, and a lot of those devices nowadays are actually sitting on the network edge, and that's where our security features come into play. We want to make sure that we protect those devices that are at the network edge and ensure that the information that's coming through from there is secure as it can be.
Everybody needs protection these days because
Everybody
we live
needs
on the
protection.
internet virtually.
Absolutely.
All our information is there.
Absolutely.
What would you say is really striking about this year's report coming through in terms of cybercrime?
The biggest interest that I noticed was the number of mobile devices that are being targeted. We've seen a shift in targeting personal computers or PCs or laptops, and it's now seemed to in the last 2 years have evolved into targeting mobile devices. That of course I think keeps up with the industry trend of majority of people in the world having at least one, if not two, cell phones, and that's where the cyber criminals seem to be focusing a lot of their time on, which is very interesting.
That makes a lot of sense, though, if you have to think about how we use smartphones. They're virtually mini PCs. Everything's on the smartphone. But how are syndicates or hackers, whatever you want to call them, targeting mobile phones? What are they using to target mobile phones?
So the mobile phones are actually being attacked via malware or malicious software. There's a huge amount of hackers or software developers that are creating these software portals that are looking to identify vulnerabilities on your device, whether that be your device that's on the open network or whether it be you downloading an application from the App Store directly. There's been some interesting information online regarding the iOS stores or the Android stores or Google Play where certain applications are actually loaded with malware, and in the hope that you will download their app and you will then unconsciously known have that piece of malware sitting on your device.
So how do you know, as a user, which app is safe and which isn't?
It's a good question, and it's all about education and research. Make sure that, as with an email, if you get sent an email from an unknown address and it says please open the attachment, you probably shouldn't. Unless you're verified, unless you know it's a trusted source, it's up to the education.
I get a lot of those
end
emails
user.
Actually, to be quite honest.
We all do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those phishing emails that are sent out in the hope of some of us not understanding the consequences or the repercussions, or possibly understanding what may be attached to that email, and we open it and we don't see anything and we go about our day, but we don't realize that there may have been some malicious malware that was sitting in that application.
Hi, I'm Tansy Katsia, former Miss South Africa 2007, and you're watching Joburg Today.
And that brings us to the end of the show, but for more coverage on the city, do check out our playlist. And that's it from me, Nashina. As always, have a good one.